Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to. If you're interested in creating more balance in your life, understanding your 5-element energetic nature, finding the path of greatest ease,
or releasing the baggage of this lifetime and discovering ancient alchemy that can help you fly in your life, join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical transformational journey.
Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. My name is Jay. This is pod number 45, and I'm here with my co-host, Lita Herman.
Welcome back, Inspired Actioneers. So today we're going to do another 9 Palaces podcast, and this one's related to the fire element.
Fire. You're
just starting off singing, huh? Jay's been getting singing lessons, in case you haven't noticed.
Not.
No. Okay.
I love the Prosperity Palace.
Yes,
It's
today's
a fire
about
palace for sure.
Yeah, today's about the Prosperity Palace, which is one of the 9 palaces.
You know, Lita, when I first started to really understand the Prosperity Palace, I realized that most people, including myself at the time, and, you know, I'm not saying I understand it completely now, but they really don't know the difference between abundance and wealth versus prosperity. And I find the Chinese ancient theories on the 9 palaces makes a very big distinction between them. And that might be a great place to start to basically understand and explain the prosperity a little bit.
Sure. I know exactly what you mean. I felt the same way. I really didn't think there was a difference between prosperity and wealth in general. When I first encountered the 9 palaces, I was like, oh, this is super cool, because having enough, which is what the wealth palace is about, or abundance,
sure,
versus having more than enough, which is what they're calling prosperity.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. And, you know, for those of us who have enough, but still don't feel like we have that really, really like so much that we don't need it all, like a billionaire or whatever. I'm just using money as an example. Yeah. That's a totally different feeling to kind of understand.
For me, having enough is when I don't have to keep checking my bank account every day. It's like, I know there's enough. I'm not worried. I'm not tending it. I just know there's plenty and it's going to cover everything I'm doing. And I can be really at ease about my wealth.
So for you, that's a sense of being ease in your wealth. What about other banks that you don't have to check? What about your time bank?
Yes, my time bank. Well, I may have a little bit of wealth palace issues in my time bank, because it does feel like I never have enough time, but I really do. I do accomplish a lot every day. And so I think maybe I should rethink that. But there's also energy, and I have a lot of energy. I feel very wealthy in the energy.
You definitely have
aspects.
Prosperity, because you share that energy.
Yeah. And I think the work I do gives me energy. So anyway, there's a lot of different ways that you can have more than enough.
So what do you do with that excess? That's the next thing we should talk about. You have this. Do you let it sit in your bank account and accumulate, or do you want to make changes with someone? What's the level of change you want to make in yourself when you feel like you have enough?
Well, you know, when you think about it, are you going to just let it sit in your bank account or sit in your energy account? I don't know how much energy a person could actually accrue. But
well, if they rest a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah. But, you know, do you want to be an investor? Do you want to buy property? Or dare I say it, do you want to donate money to people?
Or do you just want to give it and be philanthropic? Like in the tropics,
right?
But with Phil. So no, do you want to be that kind of person? And we're going to talk a little bit about all the billionaires in the world. And I know we were just talking a little while ago about the Morehouse College thing. So we're dating this a little bit as May 2019.
Yeah, Robert Smith is this billionaire, and he did something truly amazing.
And he did it on the fly, right?
It sounded like it. I don't think we know for sure, but he is donating, which probably is about $40 million, they think. You know, he's got like $1 bazillion. So he probably thought, why not
help? A billionaire is technically a bazillionaire.
Yeah, right? I think so.
So he's like hundreds, like almost 300 kids, right?
Yeah. And so why not help those kids when you've got so much is probably what he thought. I just love
that. That is so inspiring. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of other really, you know, philanthropic people out there, the billionaires. They kind of have this club now.
Yeah.
The whole Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation with Bill.
Yeah,
and-
well, Warren Buffett.
That's it, Warren Buffett.
Yeah, decided to start this group of billionaires. It's hard to
So
believe
the billionaire
there's enough.
buffet, right?
Yeah,
The
there's
buffet.
like 200 now that have signed
Wow.
on and committed to give half their wealth.
All right.
So if you've got billions,
All right,
that's
if
a
we
lot
hit
of
the
money.
billion, we're going to do half.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm in.
Okay, well, before we keep going, let's just talk about our different news.
You mean before we spend our billion or make our billion?
Yeah, right.
All right, so what do we got to remind
Yeah.
everyone about? So wait, before we go, can we just remind everyone to take 2 seconds and go to the Apple podcast site there where you get your podcasts. Even if you get in the app, go to the Apple website, hit the rate and review, subscribe. From that would help us a lot.
Yeah, and we're slowly getting more reviews, and we're really trying to boost our, basically get
Our awareness out there.
Our awareness out there. And one of the main ways of doing that is through Apple. So if you would please go and write an Apple review, even if it's just 2 words, just rate.
And also
and
the
review
the Google podcast is just starting out now. So, I mean, they're huge. So pretty soon
Yeah.
Google's going to be like a big player. They probably already are. And what's going on with the app?
We also have an app, and the big thing about the apps is we have some meditations on it. It's much easier to get those meditations to you that way than on a website. So we are very pleased to have
Those
that.
meditations are free, right?
Yes,
Most
and
of them?
there are more coming. Some are a paid subscription, and some are free. So
I know we got a lot of free ones.
some of the really good ones are free.
I think they're all good.
Yeah. And we'd love to have you join us and subscribe. And we have more and more stuff coming out with the app in the future, and we're excited to share it.
Yeah,
And we
it's-
also have, everyone should know, a Facebook group, and there's a Facebook page called Inspired Action Podcast.
I like to call it the Facebook.
Yeah, the Facebook.
Please join us on
we're
the Facebook.
on the Facebook, and when you're on the podcast page, you can click the link to our group and then ask to join. And we
We're always
joke
looking
about
for new people.
the really difficult question you have to answer to join the group.
We can't give you that question.
Yeah, you'll have to see.
You have to
when
go
you get
there. It's very deep.
very deep.
And then if you actually have any questions, please send
Yes.
them to...
Questions at inspiredactionpodcast.com, or you can also ask in the group itself. And we're going to very soon,
Yeah.
in a couple podcasts, we're going to answer some questions. So please,
If you want a
if you-
T-shirt, ask a question.
or just, start a dialogue. We basically are here to have conversations and dialogues, and we would love to hear from you and any thoughts that you have or ideas for
You don't have
additional-
to take a T-shirt if you don't wear T-shirts. But
Yeah.
almost everybody knows someone who would like a free T-shirt.
And we have a new design on the
Yay!
T-shirts that we put up on the last podcast.
I just looked over. You're
website.
wearing yours. I am not.
I am wearing mine today, so we would love to share that fun design with you. Should we tell them about the design?
No.
No, it's a surprise.
Ask a question, get a T-shirt.
Yeah, there you go.
We don't know which one you're going to get. One of the cool ones. All right,
Okay.
so let's go back. See, we're prosperous. We're just going to give them
We're
away.
prosperous. We're
So
giving
ask a
them
question.
away.
We'll use it. We'll send you a T-shirt. We'll even pick up the mailing on that.
All right. Well, let's get back to the prosperity
Which
palace.
is my favorite palace.
It should be because, honestly, I have never met a more giving person than you, Jay.
Aww.
If you weren't such a private person, I would say you'd give the shirt right off your back to someone who needs it, but then you'd just be in your bra. And I think that wouldn't fly for you.
That's a different kind of podcast.
right.
Aw. Well, you're right on both counts. I do really enjoy giving. It's kind of like my mojo. It's kind of like my thing. It makes me happy on many levels, and I just really can't explain it at that core level of why it's in me. I just know that, I've cultivated it, I've worked on it, but it just really just, when you get going, it's so easy. And Lita, you're also extremely prosperous. You're being very humble.
Well, thank you. And I think I am very prosperous with my time. I love to share knowledge with people. I have a lot to give. So I this podcast, for example. I
didn't really think about it that way. You're right.
This is really is our prosperity. And this palace isn't just about having more than enough money. As we said, the generosity can be knowledge, it can be wisdom, it can be time. So it's just about giving.
Yeah. And, before we get too deep, one of the things that is really, when I'm working with clients and we're doing some coaching and the prosperity comes up, and it comes up for everyone, almost everyone, it's really about receiving as well. Because if you cannot receive, how can you give, without if you can't really understand that you have more than enough, how can you give when you get to that level?
It's funny, we should just mention the earth element because that was one of the themes of earth. An earth person likes to give their knowledge, their wisdom away, and they have to first be able to receive.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And so I always try to go through that with someone. And if you look at the bigger picture before we get into this, we keep going on the outskirts of this, but if you don't have the prosperity palace kind of rocking or at least chugging along at some level, I really see a lot of the other palaces that are struggling because you're kind of almost in a survival mode. You're not in a giving mode. Your heart is not open. That's why it's a fire palace. It's the heart. I think that it's a really good way to get all of your palaces going if you can really look at the prosperity palace.
It's very true. I mean, think about it. There are 9 palaces and prosperity is the 9th palace, which means in a way it's the more advanced palace because if your health is off, forget it. You're going to be spending all your resources.
Absolutely. If your career is off, you're going to be struggling. You're going to be worried about money or where you are in the world or not having enough, like you said, of plenty in the bank. You just have to, be like, wait until I get a better job before you give money.
And then there's children. Children are very expensive, like saving for your kids' college educations. Children are very expensive. I mean, just putting your kid into soccer these days costs a ton of money, for after school sports.
I was just talking to someone who said their kid's going to play soccer camp for the summer. It's going to cost $1,200.
Oh my God. Wow.
That was like a uniform, a traveling uniform, a bag, I don't know, extra balls, who knows, right?
Oh my God.
But $1,200 for the summer to play one sport of soccer.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. But you know what? They're going to do it.
And then there's the creativity palace.
Yeah, that's a great one too. And that one always, we talked about this before, how it goes out the window relatively quick if someone is struggling. And if their prosperity is out of whack, the creativity palace is just like non-existent.
How are you going to donate money if you have a burning passion that's a creative passion and you can't actually fulfill it?
Because it costs a lot of money.
Right.
You need supplies. You need different things to buy, or I don't know. I could go on and on.
And then there's your relationship palace. What if you get a divorce?
Yeah, there goes half.
There, you're not going to be feeling very prosperous when you have to give half away.
I would just look at Amazon with Jeff Bezos. We were looking at the billionaires earlier. We were talking about it's the biggest divorce, I think, in the history.
Jeff and his wife, Mackenzie.
Yeah, I mean.
But she also just committed to give half of her billions away.
To that fund we were talking about, which is so cool.
So she didn't let her relationship block her.
No, she went right into prosperity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And there's a lot of good people on there that are doing it. And there are people who are really in the arena, as Brené Brown says it. As she says, you got to be in the arena before you can, really go in it. And these people are in the arena and they're doing their best, I think.
Yeah.
That's the billionaires. And
these are the prosperous ones. They are the ones who actually don't just hoard the money.
Right.
And I was thinking about billionaires these days. Many people just aren't comfortable with making that much money.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to feel uncomfortable like that someday.
Yes.
But seriously though,
yeah, really. Oh, I would like to try that out. Thank you.
I'll let you know on that. Okay, I'll get back to you. But no, seriously, the organizations like the Gates Foundation, it helps the people who maybe want to do something with all that money that maybe just aren't comfortable, like the Warren Buffetts, even the Gates, and all the different people. And so I think for me, when I talk about this other people, they're like, "Oh, aren't you afraid they're going to do something bad with the money, or how do you know what they're going to do? What are they doing with the money?" And for me, you just have to take that leap of faith that they will be excellent stewards of that wealth.
Yeah. But I think just in terms of the rest of the people who aren't billionaires, if you think it's not fair to accumulate so much wealth to your fellow people of the earth, we need to think about that.
Is it looked as an evil thing?
Yeah.
It's a bad thing.
Right.
If you have too much.
And here we see that these billionaires are stepping up and giving half of what they have away. What would it be like if we all gave half of what we have away?
I love that concept.
Really?
I don't think I'm personally practicing that right now, but it's a really cool concept. It's kind of hard to understand, especially if you're still searching for that enough. But, in my life, I have always had the philosophy that it comes in, it comes out. It's a trickle, it's a flood. It's a gushing of resources on many different levels. Again, not just money. If I didn't receive all the wealth that came to me easily, I don't know if I'd be able to give it away easily.
Right.
If I had this concept when you said that about giving away half, I'm like, what if money had no longer value in the world? Like, just take it out of the factor. Boom. Money doesn't exist. Like Star Trek. Okay. Like, then what?
I think there are many, many people who are uncomfortable getting more than their fair share. So I guess they wouldn't be thinking about money.
Would that level the playing field?
Yeah, perhaps.
Then we'd have different kind of concepts to think about.
Wait, Star Trek didn't have money?
No.
Oh.
No money.
How did I
Everyone
miss that?
had what they all had.
It's true. They never really...
Well, no
Yeah,
money.
cool.
Everything was just taking... I mean, any Trekkies out there can help me on that, but I'm pretty sure they had no currency that ruled the people.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Well, I think if you're really looking at your own prosperity palace, the number one question is, do you feel guilty when you have too much?
yeah. Or do you feel guilty when you receive?
Yeah. Really
Part of the
big
homework we're going to
issue.
do is we're going to ask some questions. And one of those questions that I just snuck in at the last minute was, when was the last time when you received, someone gave you, how did you feel?
Yeah.
Was it guilt-free? Did you feel yucky? Did you feel like you had to do a lot more to get that perspective back? But we'll talk about that.
I think some people have this weird thing where they get money and they have to immediately spend it.
Oh, yeah, that's the panic. Oh, yeah, I see that all the time. It's like they feel like if they don't spend it, then someone's going to take it away from them.
Yeah.
So how can you be prosperous if you have that?
prosperous if you have that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we've talked about that before, I kind of forgot about that.
It's like a panic.
It's like a panic. Yeah, like I spend. And boy, if that's not a theme in the U.S. and some of the other cultures, in the world, I can see it.
But let's look at it from the Chinese theory and the perspective of
The Taoist perspective.
the
Yeah, well,
Taoist,
you go.
Because there is a famous poem that I think we've mentioned before in this podcast, but we're going to talk about it again today because it really applies to the prosperity palace. These are the classical ancient writings, and it's basically telling us how the universe works. And what they believe is it's almost like a divine plan.
Yes, and you have to kind of cooperate with that plan, or you just disrupting how things work in the universe.
Yes, so the poem says, when all beings are at your disposal, we speak of knowing how.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's just so powerful. And, we like this so much, we put it in one of our books that are coming out later on this year, The How of Why.
Yeah, and I know. So when I first read this poem, I didn't get it. I was like, well, when all beings are at my disposal, what the heck does that mean? I was like, so anyway, so let me explain.
Please, I may chime in, but please explain it to our listeners.
Okay, so the idea is what comes around goes around. It's basically that. So if one person gets a lot of money, or let's just say a lot of resources of some type, and that person obviously doesn't need that amount of money.
Because
there's a lot of
they have
extra.
enough.
They have enough and they have extra. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't have received that amount, the extra, because it just, it came their way because someone else along their path needs extra given to them.
Sure.
So that whatever's left over, that person may feel inspired and compelled to help this new person. And suddenly this new person then gets extra. And now they receive that extra and they're, become wealthier.
It really, if you think about it, it makes the world move forward. Mm-hmm. Because if the people had all the money, didn't do anything with that money,
then
that's it.
The world would stop rotating.
Yes. All right. So let's give a quick example. Let's just say you receive $100,000, because money is the easiest way to explain it. And it sometimes is like the root of the issues with the people that I work with. Mm-hmm. But okay, so you get the $100,000 and you're like, woohoo, that's for me. I finally have some money. It's a lot of money. Now what? So you
didn't need 100, you only needed 50.
You only needed 50. That's right. For a year or 2 or 3, whatever, who knows, right? So your 100,000, you're feeling pretty good right now. Your bank account is kind of chunky and no one's knocking at your door. You have all your debts paid. Now what? So do you look for someone else out there who needs a little help?
No, you just hang on to the money, and then when this inspiration comes, you see someone doing something, maybe you're really inspired by them, maybe you have a deep compassion to help them, but just like someone was at your disposal when you got that money, now you have more than enough. And, thanks to someone helping you. And now you can go help them maybe do a project
Yeah, and
that
the
you
universe
like.
works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe they're creating something that you love, and that means you want to participate.
Yeah.
So now you're at their disposal.
So, don't hoard the money. It's about sharing. It's believing that there'll be more down the road.
Yes.
And this is the big part right here. Open your heart.
Yeah.
Love people. Believe that there's still good in the world. Be open to inspiration of all those things you just said. I know it kind of sappy, but here's my big thing. It's not a dog-eat-dog world.
No.
We have to share. We have to be open and giving and kind and loving. And that's where the Prosperity Palace comes in.
And that's what the poem's about. Basically, this is how the universe works. If we're all in alignment with ourselves and our own guidance and our compassion, then we're helping each other out with each of these things we're creating. And so we get inspired to be prosperous.
Yeah, and then another person, comes along and they need something, and then another project, and then they help someone else, and it just kind of keeps popping up.
It's like whack-a-moles.
Except you don't want to whack them.
No, you don't want to whack these
How
ones.
about the video we saw when we were at Abraham that time when they had the little whack-a-kitten?
Whack-a-kitten, yes.
It's so gentle.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, no whacking moles. What did those moles ever do to anybody, right? Get the kittens, get the gentle touch. But yes, so it is a very good way of the whack-a-kitten game. Someone pops up, you give them a little love.
Yeah, so your resources become resources for other people. And the world has enough resources for everyone if we allow them to circulate.
Yeah, that's another, theme or concept I like to talk about. Currency, I looked it up in Webster's dictionary yesterday. And the currency, do you know what the currency actually, the definition is?
No.
It's a circulation as a medium of exchange.
So circulation's the key word.
Yeah. So it's the hoarding of the money that causes the most trouble in this world.
Yes.
Not because, it's because it takes away our ability to give and receive. It helps us grow and prosper.
Yes. And, I have seen people who are on a quote unquote fixed income later in their life, but they have plenty of money and they just go into this hoarding mode like crazy. And
it's a tailspin sometimes.
Yeah. Because
it's fear-based.
They don't think they can receive anything new.
Yeah. They're like, I can't be generous or prosperous because I don't have I barely am getting by.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is when you're retired and you are on a quote unquote fixed income, you may be very, very prosperous in time.
Totally. Or other resources.
Yeah.
For
or
sure.
other resources. So, the mentality of hoarding, basically time, money, whatever resources in general.
Even I think love is a resource sometimes.
And love, if you're holding back.
Or you're afraid that someone's going to take it from you.
Yeah.
I have just enough stored away.
Yeah.
And I'm counting on my investments and I can't really deviate and I would take that trip, but I can't. And so they torture themselves. How are they going to have a prosperous attitude if they're like in that mode?
They're in the fear mode and they're not in alignment. So if we allow ourselves to help others who are inspired to help and let others help us because they're inspired to help us, then the world will be such a better place.
Made me think of Tony Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of talk about him once in a while. And when he was young, he had some early poverty. He didn't have food and different things. And so he basically, vowed that if he ever made it, he was going to feed people. And he does that all the time with his charity. He just gets his money and his time and he buys his food and he feeds. I think it's called Feed America, but I'm not sure.
Oh, we'll put it in the show notes.
Look it up.
It's a great organization.
But it was his prosperity that made it grow.
Yeah, he was prosperous from the beginning. And, he was prosperous because he had compassion.
Yeah.
Because he
had heart.
He knew what it was like to be those people that couldn't eat Thanksgiving dinner, for example.
Yeah.
He knew what that was like. And so he opened his heart and he said, what can I do to help these people?
Yeah, it is compassion, and it is kind of comes from your life experiences. We all can give to different charities. That's another beautiful thing. There's so many charities. There's so many people out there that need resources.
Yeah.
They need
Being
help.
prosperous doesn't mean you're like, oh, I should give away some money, so I'll just pick a charity. I don't really care. And you just pick a charity and you get, where's your heart?
Yeah.
This is a fire palace. This is
Yep.
part of opening your heart.
So one of the biggest and easiest resources to give is, you ready? Drum roll. Time. What do you really spend your time on? If you're watching TV, playing Candy Crush, or any of those other games, or you're watching the YouTube, or you're scrolling the Facebook, it really, is that a good way to spend your time? Or could you actually put that to better use and maybe, be inspired and then be inspiring?
Yeah. And then when you do open your heart and you really connect with people, you're going to give without an agenda, because fire gives unconditional love. So the Prosperity Palace is also about giving without strings attached, just giving for the sake of a good cause.
So, you have the neighbors. When we used to, back when we were younger, you knew your neighbors, you do favors for your neighbors. It was kind of like a give and a take. Maybe, I'll take care of your dogs while we go on vacation. You take care of our dogs when we go, or, someone might be out of work. You have to have that compassion that they can't do what they usually do.
And you make them dinner or something and bring it over.
You put your heart into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a connection. If you really like the person and you can be from a heartfelt giving, I always like to say giving without an agenda, without the strings attached, just for the giving's sake and for the good cause that inspires you personally. That again is prosperity.
And really, what is the one thing that gets in the way of that is judgmentalness. It interferes with your compassion. And you come up with all these judgmental stories.
Yeah. And probably they're not even like the real deal. It's just a story that you told yourself.
Probably. I mean, being fire, I find that if I focus on loving everyone and seeing the goodness inside of them, even though they're living differently than I am, they're making different choices, but I see that everyone deserves to receive love. And, that's how I live today. But when I was younger, I was very judgmental, and it prevented me from doing some very prosperous things. Example was when I was in the Peace Corps after college in West Africa and Mauritania. And, I was young. I didn't know about Chinese medicine or anything like that. And I really liked this neighbor kid. He was a young boy. I hired him to do work around my house because I wanted to help him out. And one day he knocked on my door and he asked me for some money to help bring his sick brother to the local shaman. And I got like all weirded out, like, who's this doctor? He's like a witch doctor. My judgment got in the way. And I told him, no, go take him to the hospital, which, by the way, was a dumb idea, because really the hospital was barely a healthy place. You'd probably get more sick by going to that hospital than any of the local shamans. And the irony, the crazy irony of it is like, now I'm like a shaman, the type of healer that works in that realm. And it felt like the universe knocked on my door with this opportunity that would have been very inspirational to me today.
And prosperous to them.
Yeah. And
to you.
And I could have been prosperous, and it would have led me down the super cool path to meet a real shaman, right?
Yeah,
and
it would Africa.
And maybe it would have opened a door to my future where I am now and an exciting new reality, but my door stayed shut.
That's the fear, the wedge of fear. It shuts a lot of people down.
Yep.
If your heart had been open to this young boy in maybe a slightly different way, it probably wasn't even that much money to you.
Oh, no.
It's probably like $1 or $2.
That's what was crazy. I was prosperous at that moment because the Peace Corps paid us, I think I remember now, it was $200 a month.
Wow.
Which you'd think, that's not very much money. But back then in Africa, that was a year's salary for him.
Yeah.
So I had so much money compared to him, I would have gladly helped him out. But I was being judgmental.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot. And, if you're walking on the streets and you see someone, on the sidewalk and they have a sign and you decide, I'm not going to give them anything because of X, Y, and Z. That's a story that you're telling. That's a judgment.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get ripped off, or what if it's turned around and you feel vulnerable for asking for help from someone?
Yeah.
Or maybe on another angle, you give anonymously because you're afraid you'll get inundated with other people. It's that, whack a kitten thing, but they're popping up. They might want more and more and more.
Yeah, there's so many variations on this. And the Prosperity Palace isn't just for fire people. All of us need to think about what is our relationship to giving away some of our resources
and
when
receiving.
We have it. Yeah.
So it's giving and receiving.
Yeah.
And, it's definitely not for just fire people. We have all 5 elements in us. But, I just think that, if people can move away from that, I'm always broke, or I'm just getting by, or I'm always like behind the 8 ball, or stuck under that rock, or I'm strapped. Those are all, limiting thoughts.
There is one other thing that we need to bring up. We often talk about the palaces where you're not doing whatever that palace is about, but sometimes you're overdoing.
Yeah.
Now, there are people who are too prosperous, if you can believe that, because remember, you have to receive enough to be able to give away. You have to have more than enough. If you are only giving away, if your prosperity is off the charts, guess what? You're not going to have enough to give away anymore.
And you might not have enough for yourself and your other family, on other levels. And again, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about time energy, love.
Right.
Yeah.
So what if you're giving it all away and there's nothing left for your family? And maybe you're doing that because you feel guilty because you did have so much money. Maybe you were received an inheritance from your family and you felt guilty. So you started giving it away. And before you know it, there's nothing left. And, it's not that you can't give away everything. It's just that you can't keep giving away. That's going to end your prosperity.
Well, that makes me also think about, there's a lot of people in the world that think we have dwindling resources. There's not enough water. There's not enough air. There's not enough money. There's not enough gold. There's not enough electricity. I can go on and on and on and on and on. So if you believe in the resources that are limited and dwindling or out of proportion, then you're just going to be stuck in this cycle of fighting about resources.
I think this is a very interesting topic because there is some controversy about it in terms of, global warming and things like that. But even if you just look at the sun as a resource, we may think we have limited energy on this planet, but we have so much access to energy through the sun. And if we start to really say to ourselves that there's enough resources for everyone on the planet, which again is a controversial issue, I think some people would argue that would help our prosperity, because it's not that we don't have dwindling oil and coal and things like that, but we have potentially other resources that we haven't even begun to tap.
We can work on the resources. How about of compassion and understanding?
Yeah.
Maybe taking time, not moving so fast,
getting to know your neighbors.
That's right. This is the wealthiest time on the planet and maybe the poorest time on the planet. How about that?
And this is also why it comes back to the global palace, which we did a podcast on earlier, which is about trying to understand that everyone in this world is fundamentally the same on a global level. And is that homeless guy that you see in your town or whatever any different than you really? I mean, on some fundamental level, we're all human beings. And then we can have compassion and understanding, and we don't need to fight over resources. We can share and we can be creative in growing our resources.
Oh, that was really good. That was really just awesome. And it made me think of Wanda Sykes. We just watched the comedy show. She's very, very funny. And she said, everyone says to her, oh, everyone's the same. She goes, no, we're different, but we're all equal. I love that. That was wow, that was a really good statement, because we are all different, but yet we're equal.
Yes. So it's about taking time to care, not moving too fast. We're all moving at lightning speed. But there's enough. There's enough money. There's enough food. There's enough resources. It may take creativity at times, but if we all have more love, there's an unlimited resource called love in the world. And guess what? We all have it.
Yeah. It's, again, this is why it's the fire palace, the heart.
Yes.
Because, you might have to get to know the name of your neighbor or your people that are on your street, or I don't know, people who are in need, because you need to know their stories. You need to know Do they inspire you? Do you have the compassion to help other people?
So let's talk about some homework.
That's a great place for homework.
Yeah, we were thinking about asking yourself some questions. Do you have enough money to pay your own bills? That's a question because you can't be prosperous if you're struggling on that level.
If you have the thought of, I can't give anyone money, I have to pay off my own debts, think about that.
Yeah.
When is enough enough? Like, do you run your credit card up every single month and then pay it off? Do you do it over time? Like, are you always on that treadmill, the little hamster wheel?
Right.
When's the last time you were debt free?
And are you going on vacations? Are you having any fun? If you're not doing the travel palace, which is also adventure and fun, then, you're not going to be able to feel prosperous because you need to take care of yourself. And part of that is having a little fun.
So what do? Max out your credit card on the wealth to go enjoy the travel so you can experience prosperity?
No, you won't get to prosperity if you're maxing out your credit card.
That's right. When was the last time you had thoughts about sharing your resources with others, such as maybe like a timeshare? If you're not going this year, do you let that timeshare sit there, or do you give it to someone in your office or one of your neighbors who maybe don't have enough resources to go away?
That's great. I mean, I see you doing this all the time, Jay. You're just so quick to give something that it's just easy for you to give, but you find the right person and you're like, boy, this person really needs this thing. And guess what? I have it.
Well, it's the whole thing about the universe. Everyone's at your disposal. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, yeah. And, there's other things to think about. Like, you could actually think about your taxes as part of your prosperity. I love this idea. You thought of it, Jay. Why don't you explain it?
Well, people talk about taxes and it's like, oh, those really evil people in the government taking a lot of money for taxes. But you know what? What if you turn that around and you're paying for, look at it from the perspective of you're paying for other people's children to go to school, or you're paying for things that you would roads and services, and we all live in this amazing country because we all chip in together.
Yeah, so your taxes could be your prosperity.
It's not a burden. It's a donation. How's that?
I was thinking about that old concept in churches, many years ago. I mean, I think it's still there for some churches, is to tithe.
Yeah,
which is a tenth, right?
Sure. Yeah,
a tenth of your income should go to charity or to your church or something like that.
I'm certain they still pass the bowl around and all kinds of different things. So there's many things that you could do. We're only asking you to look at a little bit, shift your perspective on what you have and what can you give and do you receive. And that's my last one I have here. So when was the last time you received something you didn't expect with no strings attached with a heart connection?
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think we've covered the Prosperity Palace. So we're delighted to share this. This is one of our favorite palaces.
We could talk all day about it.
I think it would be really cool for you to think about, how you could bring a little more prosperity into your life. And you don't need more money to do that.
Yeah. Before we go, I had this one last note I made here. So I hear this a lot. Like, I would give money, but I'm afraid I'm going to be taken advantage of. Or I don't know where the money's going. What if the charity's crooked? What if the guy's just going to go buy drugs on the street? And I say, you know what? Why don't you shift that around? And maybe you were the catalyst that they change their life, or, have a little faith. Let things go. Be happy that you've added to your wisdom palace if something like that happens to you.
Right.
It's not a bad thing.
Right.
Just chalk it up as wisdom.
Yes.
All right.
Well, that's why the wisdom palace comes before the prosperity palace.
That's right. You have to be a little wise before you can be prosperous.
So listen to the last podcast episode on wisdom.
Yeah. And my final thought is, it's not as hard as you think it is. It's the stories and the limits that you put on yourself.
Yeah. And our next palace we're really excited about is the last of the 9 palaces, which is actually the 5th palace, but we're doing it last.
We decided to save it for last.
Save the best for last. And that's the home palace, which is the Earth Palace. So all you Earthies out there, make sure you listen to the next pod.
Yes, it'll be on the home palace. It's great. All right. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
See you next time.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast, and you've reached the end. Woohoo! why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there. We love having you with us on this journey, and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast. And if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews, and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at lita@inspiredactionpodcast.com or jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.